12 of Genesis, we see where God comes to Abraham and says to him then God begins to really set the atmosphere for the anointing to flow. He said, in order for the anointing to flow, he said, you got to get out from among your familiar territory, leave your country, leave your family influence, and go leave thy father's house or thy father's authority, because I'm going to play the father in your life. And sometimes he says you got to leave all those familiar circumstances in order to flow in the vision that God has for you. And he said, I have a vision for you. And whether we know it or not, other folk have visions for us also. And sometimes those visions in our familiar places, those in our familiar places have visions for us that are in conflict with the vision that God's about to show us. And the vision that God's about to show us, God says, I'm going to take you to a place, to a state of life that you never imagined. Now, God knew that Sarah had some issues physically, but then God says that my vision and my plans for you supersede any visual impediments that you may have, because this is what I want to happen in your life. And so when we walk with that kind of understanding, that, when we look around us and our surroundings around us may very well be an impediment to what God has in mind for us. We have to learn to walk above and follow God and allow God to give you the blessing that he has for you, and you will be a conduit to bless the world. That's what we talk about all the time in our mission in BYOB, is that we are going to bless 1 million families. People say, well, how are you going to do that? Well, Jesus told us with greater works we'd be able to do than he did. And so he has impacted the whole world. It's hardly a place that you can go in this world that they haven't heard the name Jesus. And so I'm excited, Ms. Dyer. I'm excited about the opportunity that God says, leave those familiar thoughts, those familiar places, and begin to do those things that are uncommon in the name of God. Is Ms. Dyer?
Yes, I'm here.
You don't usually have that hesitation.
No, it's you. We talking. I'm reading the comments. So let me first say
hello. Oh, that's right. We got people to comment. We want them to comment. We want to hear from them.
And so let me say hello to Mr. Terry. But also, yes, we are definitely here to be a blessing. That's exactly what we're here for. We're here to be a blessing. And when we think about the movement and what's transpired and what's actually manifesting, around the world right now, what's manifesting with the movement, I just get excited, because people make decisions because they want something. People are making decisions for their lives because it's something that they're looking for and they want to make sure that gets accomplished in their personal lives. And I'm just looking at, we all entered 2020, and 2020 should have taught us something, because 2020 was on our calendar, but it wasn't on the calendar. It wasn't what we planned it out to be. And so this is, we had to get familiar with the uncommon, and we have to begin to operate with the mindset and a skill set, and just focusing on shifting ourselves so we can always make sure we're in position to where we actually create our value, and where we're in position to where we dictate the outcomes. And so when you say a blessing to be a blessing, most of the times, and I think Mr. Rogers has referenced this before on this show, the fact that when individuals have knowledge or when they have something, they're normally not willing to pay it forward. They're really normally not willing to share it. And so that's why we do so many avenues of approach. That's why we have our book, that's why we do the cause. That's why we're here with the movement. And even now, with the show, because we want to make sure that these families, 1 million families, are financially educated and impacted. And when we have a year that we just had, such as 2020, where nothing that we thought would manifest and transpire has happened, it should be a wake-up call. It should be something that says, you know what, it's time for a shift and a change. And I just challenge everyone to take 2021 and just kind of make that shift and be intentional about it. Let's be intentional about accepting and understanding that the way ahead is not the norm. We now have to make a shift and take control of our own lives.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I definitely share that same sentiment, but I'm just thinking about what this movement is, be your own bank. And people often ask me, well, what does that mean? Well, we want to help people understand that there's an infrastructure in place that you and I have been committed to through our financial relationship that we have with our personal financial institution. So as Dr. Bythewood would always say, we're not anti-institution, we're just pro your household. And when I think about 2020, as Ms. Dyer was just making mention of, and we think about some of the things that govern here in the United States specifically, there's an indice that we're familiar with, it's called the Dow Jones Industry. And when the pandemic hit, prior to, we were right on the verge of capturing a number that the industry had never experienced before, right around the 30,000 mark. And then COVID hit, and because of uncertainty and people's response emotionally to the market went all the way down as low as 17,000 for the Dow Jones. So in the midst of that, when we talk about be your own bank, you're talking about being a blessing, having this information to understand and help individuals know that in the midst of the pandemic, the market rescinded, but because many of us were not privy to this information, we missed out on that downfall, which many thought the economy was falling. But in the midst of that, by being your own bank and understanding movement, then the market, people made money. And then here we are today in the midst of the pandemic, 9 months later, the Dow Jones industry closed at a high of over 30,000. So when you look at that, we're talking about a nearly up and down, nearly 23,000 points that people had the opportunity to participate in. But because this is why we are blessing people with this information, because many people were not aware that it could have made money when the market was descending as well as ascending. And then on yesterday alone, Elon Musk, the gentleman, the CEO and founder of Tesla, this guy made $9.7 billion in one day. $9.7 billion in one day. And so I just want our listeners to know there's nothing wrong with the economy. That's why, as you said, Bishop, coming out from things that we've been most familiar with. And this is why you have to pay attention to this information, because many of us come from places where there was no conversation about financial things and how to make sure our money was working for us. So this is truly a blessing that we are armed and equipped with this information to be able to pay it forward.
The presupposition that I brought out of my familiar place was that I have to work to get money. I have to work for money, and the renewal of my mind was now that I can make money work for me, and the blessing about that is I can make other people's money work for me. I did that this morning about 3 a.m. And so, what are some of the presuppositions that we bring from these familiar places into our lives that can be an impediment to making progress and inhibiting us from the wealth that God has for us, and He wants to show us some of those presuppositions, those things that, one of the things that I've always been taught: when you read scripture, don't read it with any presuppositions, because you have a tendency to read into scripture what you're thinking and try to get scripture to say what you already think. And you have a presupposed idea about what scripture is saying. And so because of our first teaching, because of what we've been taught, we bring into life some presuppositions about life, and about how things are false expectations about how things work and how they should be. And so you guys talk with a lot of people, a lot of different people all week long. And so let me hear some of those presuppositions that inhibit people from grabbing hold to this opportunity for financial freedom.
Well, I know one.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I know one is that what leaps out of my mind is we've been taught or led to believe that if something is too good to be true, then it's too good to be true. And systemically and systematically, that's been one of the problems from a ministry standpoint, from a culture standpoint, that we've just been taught that if it's too good to be true, then it's too good to be true. And so we find ourselves looking at our familiar, our family, because the mindset, and we have to really talk about education, because the educational system is actually getting the results that it was intended, right? So now we've grown to a place where is it the education or what we've been educated upon, specifically when it comes around money matters. I often think about life now when we have individuals that we're now exposing to this information as young as 11, and now being engaged with this information, what their life will look like had someone taken the time with many of us, even what we've been able to accomplish. What if we would have started out in preschool? What if we would have started out in elementary school, understanding the dynamics of true money versus money working for us? And that's one of the things that we have to erase, where when people share information, what's in it for me, you're only doing this because it's benefiting you. No, we're sharing this information because it's going to benefit your household. So that's one of the presuppositions that we have to really destroy from a mindset perspective. And once again, everything leads back to mindset.
And I'll just add to that, when you think about, he just mentioned Elon Musk. Okay, so when you think about those pre-exposed mindsets or those pre-exposed things that you come with, you'll think about Mark Zuckerberg, or you think about, the Jeff Bezos, or you think about those individuals, and when we mention them and mention what they did, most of the time we have this, well, it's for them, or, we start wondering, instead of wondering how they did it and how they got there, we were very critical of what transpired, or, so yet they're able to do it. And then, so those are those things. But then think about it, even Tyler Perry crossed over during the midst of a pandemic. And instead of even saying, well, how did he, one of the things that we always come with, even it goes from, well, it's for them, or they're wealthy, or, what are they doing? And you start thinking they're not operating with the right business sense. But then Tyler Perry always say is congrats, well deserved. So, we still have to make a shift, because not one time in that did you say, how can I position myself? What is it that I can do to take myself to the next dimension? And when you really, really think about it, 82% of millionaires, 82% of individuals that create wealth are self-made. It isn't passed on. So that silver spoon mentality and all of that, we have to eliminate. But then at the same time, isn't that what the word says, that we're supposed to leave a legacy to our children's children? Isn't that the silver spoon? So if someone is, able to provide that, if someone is able to do that, let's salute them, because they're operating in the right principles. If someone's child is wealthy, or we're able to provide and give our children a different life, which is ultimately our, leading into our children's children, shouldn't we salute that? Because we're operating in the word instead of being so critical. So we need to be able to make that shift. We have to be able to make that shift mentally and say, you know what, this is what I deserve. I deserve these things. And if 82% of people can be self-made, I can be self-made too. And we can get up and go get it. And stop thinking that everything is that keeps me. Look at where you were last year. Look at where you were the year before. If that's the life you want to continue to live, then hey, well be it, go do it. But if you want to change and you're ready to stop talking about, well, I'm gonna eat my black eyed peas this year on New Year, we're ready to stop doing that, then let's move forward and be willing to accept something, because nothing changed, and black eyed peas is not the answer.
Bishop, did she say black eyed peas?
I had some black eyed peas. I went to Piccadilly the other day, got some black eyed peas and cornbread, and they were good.
That's a presupposition right there, Bishop.
Yeah,
That's one. Black eyed peas. We
yeah,
picking black eyed peas to
I don't want
have
no
good luck
pennies.
for the new year, right?
Hey, the black eyed peas supposed to be the pennies. I don't want no pennies. I need some collard greens. I mean dollars. You know, that's our tradition. You know, operating those superstitions and whatnot. But here's one of the things that's just as bad as those superstitions is that the presupposition is I've gone to college, I've gotten my master's degree, I got quote a good job. So what y'all doing is a hustle. And that's how they see it. And my cousin, who is an attorney in South Carolina, I was trying to get him on a VIP call the other day just to listen at the information, and all of a sudden he was so busy. You know, we got to impress each other with how busy we are, and you know, I remember he lived on a hill on a double wide trailer, so he could talk to me like about his business. And so yesterday I sent him a screenshot of a trade I made yesterday. And he been calling me ever since, every day. He called me twice a day. When y'all have another one of those meetings now? When y'all have another one of those meetings? See, because I made him, before I got out of the shower, I made more money than he would have made all day. And then he had to pay for his electricity, his office bill, and his legal assistant and all that, and he didn't make all that. So he wants to know now. But see, the presupposition is it can't be true. That cannot be legitimate. And people are doing it all day, every day. And so we have to get out of this mindset that we buy $1,200 suit. We got to at least get $300-400 shoes to go with that $1,200 suit. And then we walk around and we go to a job, somebody's job, making $700 a week, and we think we're somebody. We think we're smart. That'll make your clothes cost more than what you make during the week. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But we feel good because we got a suit on. We feel good because we walk around in somebody else's office. But why not? I think this virus has proven to us that you can make good money at home on your computer.
I mean, that's
unfortunately, excuse me, Miss Dara, I'm sorry. You go ahead and talk. You always talk first.
I think it has a delay, but go ahead. It has to have a delay in it, but go ahead.
Okay. I'm just saying, you know, we made money at home this summer, but we made money for other people. Why not be at home on your computer making money for yourself? It's just, but those presuppositions we bring into the relationship, it becomes a impediment for our success.
I think too, Bishop, like you just said, you talk about the education aspect. I mean, at the end of the day, we live in a capitalistic society, meaning that you're buying or selling goods. And even the fact that for those of us who've had our special degrees, and you mentioned the attorney, but what is an attorney, right? Attorney is somebody who's met the minimum qualifications to pass the bar in whatever state they go on and met the minimum requirements, but they still have to sell themselves for representation. So if they're not having court cases, if they're not in front of anyone, and if their clients don't have the ability to pay them, they're still operating from what we call linear income, where someone exchanges a time for service. But until all of us find a way, once again, that our work, our mechanism, just like you said, you know, during this pandemic, people have had to be able to have the ability to create wealth from the comfort of their own home. If any of us, specialty degree, 17 degrees, above zero, 100 degrees on a thermometer, whatever the case may be, if your money is not working for you while you're sleeping, then it's just a matter of time before someone decides that your service is no longer needed. So once again, that's what this movement is really about, the BYOB Bank. And erasing that, because the statistics vary from 2016 to the current state. But the average person who does obtain their college degree, right? That's why there's a big thing about student loan debt cancellation. Student loan debt cancellation, because people are working because they paid for their future to attain a degree that when they graduate, the average person is behind the 8 ball because they come out with their degree $40,000 to $60,000 in debt. So they're working to pay off those bills, and then now the ends are never meeting. And so that's really the presupposition that we really need to eradicate out of the minds of the people.
And then you can kind of go back to think about what you asked as far as why is it that we want to focus on the college education? Why is it that we want to focus on that? Because that goes back to those predisposed. See, there are things that you want to do in life, such as a doctor, such as a lawyer, where college is required. You know, you don't want anyone cutting on you that hasn't been trained in a skill set. And so that's the same exact way we have to look at this. You know, we don't want anyone giving us information. We should not object education. And so it's all about how I have that conversation. That's why we're so adamant about, you know, having this call, putting it on Facebook Live in addition to a radio show, doing our 40 calls a month, because the education speaks, the education piece, you know, helping you understand the importance of it's in our heart in order to help you become financially educated. And so finances and education was never combined into our process. We're taught go to college, but we're not taught why. That's why the attrition is so high. We're not taught to set life goals. We're taught you're going to college, you're going to college, you're going to college. And so there's value created from the time you're 5 or 6 and just quote unquote going to college. But the reality is what are you going to college for? What is your goal? Because when you get there, you feel like you've accomplished something, but what have you really accomplished? There should be some goal set in what you want to accomplish out of life. And we will be a lot further off mentally, even if we do things from operating from what we want to accomplish and from a goal set. And so when we think about our money, when we think about our finances, when we think about those things, we definitely also need to be operating from an educational standpoint, because that's really what we're doing. You should never want to just, you know, back down and push away or reject education. But because that's where we are mentally as a society, we are our responsibility, because of us caring about people, is about value creation. So are we creating a value in that conversation? Are we creating a value when we're actually speaking to someone, or do we sound like we're trying to pull them into something? So they're going to reject it. So we have a responsibility, because we made a decision to be change agents. I mean, think about it, because it's not about the money. You look right now, PlayStation 5 is so hot, and that's at least $1,000 if you want everything that goes with it. But PlayStation has created the value. PlayStation has created value in their product. So I might be saying, oh, that's ridiculous, but the person swiping a card doesn't think so. So if we want to be that shift and help people understand what they can do and what they can accomplish with their lives and what's been hidden in plain sight, that's why the labor was there. Well, you talk about we wrote the book. That's why the labor that went forth into putting this together was there. That's why, you know, we do the 40 calls a month, because we're passionate and we want people to understand that even when you make this decision to become your own bank, we're here with you every step of the way. But we need you to understand the education piece is so important.
I think you're absolutely right. And when I look at Abraham here, God says, I'm going to take you to a place where I will show you. God had a vision that he's going to give Abraham. And that vision, through that vision, Abraham was going to bless the earth. And I think about Mr. Rogers. God has given him a vision. And through that vision, we in turn are trying to bless 1 million people within the next several months. And so, Mr. Rogers, talk to me about that vision that God gave to you.
Well, the vision was simply understanding that the very thing that many of us strive toward, we've always had to try to figure it out, and many of us through trial and error when it comes to finances, and always trying to figure out how is it that I have a degree, I've done everything society has told me that I needed to do.
You,
You there, Mr. Rogers? Can you hear me, Mr. Darrell?
Yeah, it never translated and it turned into the financial resources. So then we had to begin to, analyze and ask ourselves the question, why is that the case? And that's really what this vision is. And when I look at it, the vision of impacting 1 million families, households. So that goes from the nuclear household, which then pours into our neighborhoods, our communities, the educational system, and then the whole landscape, or even our places of fellowship and worship. Because the captive audience that we have, from a ministry standpoint, even in that aspect, that that portion of transfer of information is needed. And so when you look at where are we at, where we at societal wise, lack of employment, things of that nature, it's always going to be tied into enterprise, and there's enough equity for everyone to have an equal fair share. But once again, we have to invert the methodology of what's being taught, because even when we look at some of our neighborhoods and why do we have high crime in certain areas or not, we've never been able to capture the essence of those pharmaceutical sales reps on our street corners, right? Because of labels, right? That gentleman is an entrepreneur. He has the mindset, he has the capability, but he hasn't had the infrastructure in place for someone to help him understand that. Because we can take the drug dealer who's selling crack, but then we also take that same phraseology and call someone a pharmaceutical sales rep who's peddling drugs, but then they become wealthy because of the construct. So that's what the vision represents in that standpoint.
Yeah, so people can really get a true understanding of what a lot of money is. When you're a 10-year-old, $100 bill is a lot of money. But somebody who is an adult who's handled some money, $100 bill is just pocket change. And there were some days when my pocket change was, I had a clip where every day I didn't leave the house with at least $5,000 on that clip right in my pocket. That was pocket change. And so people's understanding of money based on what they handle is a lot of money. We get ready to build a couple of buildings down by the football stadium. They said $230 million. Wow, that's a lot of money to poor people. But in this market that we're dealing with, there's what, $6 trillion, $9 trillion handled daily.
Yes.
We have access to that kind of money. What is $200 million to $9 trillion? That's not a lot of money. That's like that $100 bill to 10-year-old. That's not a lot of money. And so people, sometimes people overwhelmed when they can't believe that they get an opportunity to participate in the dealing of that kind of economic authority.
well, I say that it's all about the expansion, because your mindset, because whatever it is that you believe that you can achieve, whether you're looking for extra $500 a month or you're looking for an extra couple $1,000s a month, I mean, it's there for you. And that's really what it begins. And that's why I say the value creation, because, somebody might not even understand what it's like to be a 6-figure earner, but yet you strive for it at that job. We'll go get more degrees and we'll go get more things in order to help push us toward that higher income level, because we believe it can be accomplished. So it's not the fact that we don't believe that the money's out there. It's not the fact that we don't believe that it can be there, because how many degrees have we obtained, you know, just even before I knew about this. I mean, think about it. I have 2 master's degrees, and I also have a few skill sets that I went and I obtained, developed, and prepared myself for life after the military. And why did I do that? Because that's the norm in order to obtain more income. So believing that we can get it is just how we can get it is where that shift needs to take place. Because we will chase those things and chase those degrees and chase all of that and obtain those student loans that we were just talking about in order to obtain that. So the belief that money is out there is there, but it's believing that I personally can have it and how I'm supposed to be able to obtain it. That's where the shift needs to happen. And that understanding is there is no such thing as making more money. I want everyone to understand that there is no such thing as making more money. The currency is there. You just have to ask yourself, are you in position? Get in position. You know, we're looking at football games right now. You know, in order to catch the ball and receive the ball, the game is being played. But in order to be the one to receive the ball, you have to get in position. They're not going to throw the ball. The quarterback's not going to throw the ball to you if you're not in position. So the money's there. It's out there. The currency's there. It's flowing. But are you in position? And so you always have to be willing to shift yourself. Because as we said, it's $6.6 trillion a day flowing a day in the market. But are you in position?
You know, that's a powerful word. That's a powerful word, Ms. Dyer. You got to be in position. You know, the Lord said that He's going to give us the power, the means to get wealth. You know, that woman who had that issue of blood, she understood the importance of being in position. That's why she pushed her way to the crowd so she could be in position for Jesus to touch her and bless her. And so we got to be in position for the Lord to use, because He said to Abraham, I will make you. And you talk about Abraham, who was an average rich man during his time. God said, listen here, I'm going to make you in the midst of a famine in Egypt. I'm going to make you a great nation. Now, this was in spite of the fact that God knew that Sarah had a physical condition that would not allow her to conceive. But God said that physical impediments that we perceive that really there, God says, in spite of that, I can position you and I can make you wealthy. I can make it happen. You may not be able to conceive it. You know, you may not be able to perceive it, but you know, you just gotta, Abraham's faith was counted unto him righteousness because he believed God. He did what God told him to do. He was not in position in his home country, so he left his home country. He did one thing that was determined later on to be a stumbling block for him. God told him to leave his dad, and he took his daddy with him. And then later on, his daddy gave him some bad advice. But God was still able to bless him in such a mighty way that he became a wealthy man. God was still able to bless him with Isaac, a son, and Ishmael, a son. And then after, even though he was older than Sarah died when he and Isaac came off of the mountain. And after her death, Abraham had 6 more boys. To me, absolutely amazing, because God said, I'm going to make you a great nation. Your children are going to be like the stars in the air. And so God was able to do that in spite of whatever impediments that might have been in the way that were perceived by Abraham. God still blessed him. And so I think people need to realize, in spite of your doubts, your fears, what you perceive to be impediments, God is greater, God is bigger, and God can use a vehicle like this to change the lives of your descendants. What a blessing.
Bishop, you said something powerful just then in that dialect. So you said that God had told Abram to leave the thing that he was most familiar with, right? and he had a strong relationship with his father, but you said something powerful, that his father had given him some bad information, right? And even in our humanity, and even in our desire for our loved ones, our descendants, sometimes when we don't have the accurate information, we end up transferring information. But how do we capture the essence of our audience to let them know that even though they may be familiar with people, even their loved ones, their mother or father, how do we get people to make that adjustment, knowing that the information that we've had have led many of us to our financial decline because of who gave it to us, and we've not really wanted to question the authenticity of that information because we know that there was a serious intent, but it was just wrong information. How do we take what you just said with Abraham, and then God ended up taking him and making him a great nation, and he became, a multiple business mogul?
Well, unfortunately, the folk who taught the young men in my community economics were not economic majors. they were just good old men who had experienced certain things along the way, and they tried to share that information. And the best thing they could tell their children was, get you a good job, get you a house you can afford. And most of us look like you and I. When we buy a house, we buy that one house to die in it. Because that's the information we got. Get you a good house for your family, get you a good job, work hard, put a little money in a savings account somewhere, get a retirement plan on your job, and work that job for 30 years, and work till you ruin your health. And guys who look like you and I, we're not expected to even get Social Security. We're not expected to live past 62. And so, that's the story. It's bad economic information because that's all they knew. For the most part, they didn't even know anything about stocks or anything like that, even though stocks are not the best choice. In 1978, I learned a little bit about the rule of 72, and that how that is, about your interest rate in the 72, that tells you how long it's going to take for your money to double. So these poor people who are getting a 1% on their interest, that means it's going to take it 72 years for your money to double that you have in your savings account. And it was just that, and that's when I started. I met a guy by the name of Art Williams. We started selling insurance, and I got my security license. And that's when I began to understand that there was a different world out there, and we began to teach people that you take a little 10-year-old and put the right amount of money in a mutual fund, and by the time he's 40 years old, he'll have $1 million. And people began to look at that and look at you crazy. You have what? And that was at back time when the interest rates were really high. Jimmy Carter days, the interest rates were like 12%. And so nobody ever asked the question, well, where are the people who are funding the mutual funds, where are they putting the money? How are they getting that interest? We know that was always a mystery to us. And you think about it, not so much the banks, but the banks were going under not too long ago, and they were being propped by the federal government. But the insurance companies were not in trouble. Where are they putting their money, and why? What's going on with it? And so those are questions that we don't know enough to even ask those questions. And so the people who taught us were people who had limited information. God bless them.
So mystery solved, mystery solved, mystery solved. And that's why I can tell you that I do appreciate my mother, because one thing she always, no matter what our circumstances was, is she always told me to make sure that you keep your eyes and ears open for opportunity. So that is definitely something that I can say that was different in my household. It didn't matter what our circumstances were. For those of you all who don't know me, I grew up in a single parent household and my mother was terminally ill, but yet she still always made sure that we understood to keep our eyes and ears open for opportunity. And so when you think about that, that's why I say mystery solved, because you have individuals like myself who worked for the federal government, who worked with the exchange currency and you know, the German Deutsche and US dollar back in the day, where the currency was being exchanged. And so yet nobody ever said, hey, Private Dyer, do you know that you can literally take this and be in profit and do the same thing? No one is going to tell you. No one is just going to voluntarily tell you the way that we do. That's why we're so adamant about this. That's why we are so persistent in ensuring that the news is spread. But how does it change? How does it shift? It shifts by one person at a time. Because when you look at the mother who, when she says, you know what, I'm ready to make a change. I'm ready for something. And her mindset was open, and now it's infused in her household. And so now her son is not only looking at the markets at 11 years old, where he can't even apply for a job. Now he's reading. He's reading foundational books. He's reading books that's going to open his mindset. And once that expansion happens, you can't shrink it back. So now he's reading and he's talking to his friends about it. And so do you see how the same way bad information spreads, the same way misinformation spreads, is the same way the good news is going to spread? So that's why when we say 1 million families, it's not for the visionary, it's not for Mr. Gerald D. Rogers, it's not for Dr. Bythewood, it's not for you, and it's not for Tasha Dyer, it's not for us. It's for us to spread it and to allow them to continue to spread it. Because now, when you have a child that's having a conversation with his friends, when you have my child that's having a conversation at 20, that's having a conversation with his friends. So now that information is getting out there. But we always have to ensure what our parents wanted for us was accurate. They wanted more. They wanted us to have more than them, but they just didn't know. And so the same way we understand that we go to college because there is some information, or we go obtain higher degrees or skill sets because there was information that couldn't be taught. Everything is not OJT, on the job training. So there was information that we had to go get. And our finances is also something that we have to go get. It's something that we have to ensure that we're educated from. It's something that we have to ensure that we're empowered with. We cannot reject financial information, but think that the other information out there, we're supposed to go get skill sets. Now then, that's why I say answer solved, problem solved. So now I know what the government was doing with all those reports and information that I was sending them all the time, that our office was sending them. And now we know what those insurance companies are doing. Even the market, when Mr. Rogers alluded to the market falling and it dropping. So yes, if we don't close the transaction, then it's still subject to the market. So it sounds good with those investments, but they're still subject to the market. They're still subject to the flow. They're still subject to what's out there. When I close my transaction, whatever I traded today, when I close my transaction, that money is mine. That's the skill set that we have to have. That's that shift that has to take place.
Wow. Hallelujah. And that's so very true. Because God want to make this thing possible, and he holds us accountable. Remember Jesus when he gave out those talents because he gave the parable, the guy gave out the talents because he was going away. He gave one man what? 1 talent, another man 2 talents, another man 3 talents. The one with the 3 invested his talents. The one with the 2 invested his talents, and the one with 1 talent hid his talent. And when the gentleman came back and told him to give an account for that which he had left them responsible for, the one who hid it with the 1 talent said he hid his talent because he knew he was a hard man. He didn't want to take a chance in losing that man's money. And so that was the closest time, from my understanding, that Jesus came close to saying a bad word, because he knew that he had been mistreated. And he said, thou wicked. He called the dude wicked. He said, you wicked. Why? Because you have, why is this guy calling me in the middle of the show? He knows.
Hey, where's the wicked? Here you, wicked, here ya.
All right, I ain't gonna cussed. Jesus almost cussed, and I almost cussed. But he called him wicked. This dude been on me 40 years. I tell him every night, man, watch the show. And then he get on here and call me at 5 o'clock.
Well, at least this time it's almost 6, so he think it's almost over.
So he knows that he got a watch. He got 4 watches. He like me. I got 25 watches. He got 26. He can tell time. Anyway,
Bishop,
because he buried the talent. He said, at least you could have given the money to the money changers. You could put the money in the market. You didn't have to bury the money. So Jesus don't want you to just bury your money in some 1% account or less than 1% account. He wants you to do the intelligent thing and use that money wisely because he's going to hold us accountable. So some of us have made enough money already. If we had handled it correctly, we would be able to bless the nations. Ms. Dyer, want to talk about what's hidden in plain sight before we get off the air?
Well, I heard Mr. Rogers. I definitely want to let him chime in, and then because I know he was trying to comment to what you were saying. So,
well, I just think it's Bishop. Maybe he was calling in because he understanding that you a blessed man, that you ready to bless him right now. So he excited about.
No, he's not excited. I've been trying to get him on an opportunity call for 8 months. He's not excited.
Well, you know, he ready to come from out amongst his kindred, the things he was familiar with. So we gonna speak life in him today. But my thing is, like, you mentioned the parable of the talents, and I think it's definitely a dual role in the natural and in the spirit. So it is our responsibility to multiply what we already have and not hide from the fact that, you know, except the wheat grain dies and it goes into the ground, it cannot reproduce. So we have to be willing to die to our own mindsets and principles so that we can now flourish into that large mustard seed plant. And all we're asking to our listeners is you have a little bit of faith and allow us to grow you into that beautiful plant that you were purposed to be, because there are a lot of seeds housed on the inside of you. So seeds always work. It's just a matter of the type of seeds that you are planting. So we want to help you plant the seeds of wealth from a thought process and functionality. And how do you do that? You do that by understanding the movement, the currency, because it's always flowing. And this is not a new concept, ladies and gentlemen. Everything from the biblical days, when the scripture said there's nothing new under the sun, there was always an exchange for a product or a service. But now we just simply want to put you in a position where you can be your own bank. And when you hear those terms that seemingly they most have been led to believe that is complex, we have a system in place to make it simple for you to understand. So we're going to take you from pre-K, not knowing anything, right? That's why we keep making mention of these kids that now they've been exposed. So Jesus says, if you have faith like a child, then when you come to this, come believing and asking and allow it to guide you through the path. So, and why is it that you should have childlike faith? Because children are resilient. When they want something, they will keep asking you until they get it, because they don't have any reference point. And all they know is if I ask it and you're their caregiver, then you're supposed to provide it. And that's the posture, the position that we're going to put you in when it comes to be your own bank. So when you hear us talking about the foreign exchange market, when you hear us talking about the Dow Industries and the NASDAQ, we're going to help you understand all of that. Understand that those terminologies are going to be simple and easy for you to digest. So it's all about true economic empowerment.
Yes. So I love it. Blessed to be a blessing. Blessed to be a blessing. And so as we get ready to close out today, I just want each of you to just think about the power of your yes and the power of the magnitude of your yes. You're going to say yes to something. You know, it's really not a yes and a no. If you say yes to the economic empowerment, yes to the shift, yes to learning a skill set, then you're saying yes to being a change agent, yes, to legacy changing, because imagine what's going to happen for your household. And I want you to understand that what's been hidden in plain sight is the banks are using our money to do exactly what we're talking about. I mean, go to glassdoor.com. Though it's there. The banks are using your money. But on the flip side, if you say yes, you're saying yes to, I want to remain the same. Yes, I want to remain in an uneducated position. Yes. So what is your yes? And what is the power that's going to happen in your yes? But also, as we get ready to close out, I want to make sure that you receive your book, Be Your Own Bank, Hidden in Plain Sight. You can get a copy of this at BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. You hear us say BYOB all the time, but I need you to spell it out for the purchase of this book on the website. BeYourOwnBankMovement.com. And I want you to go there. And you can also find a lot more about who we are, understand our mission statement, our vision, where we're headed, understand who we are as individuals, just people, their testimonies out there of individuals that are just like yourself. So go find out what's the power of your yes and drop us a message. Let us know that you saw us on Facebook Live. Let us know that you heard us on the radio station. Let us know where you're chiming in from, because 1 million families financially educated and impacted is where we're headed and what is manifesting right now. And I know with this evolution of currency that's transpiring, you do not want to be left behind. So I'm excited, and I'm going to say we'll see you later. Actually, we'll see you this evening, because I told you we do over 40 calls. We're training. We're always in the market, always helping you be empowered. So I'll see you this evening. But in this spot, on this show, next week at this time, we'll see you right back here in the same spot. Love you all, and we'll see you all next week. But go get your book.